Our voice is our strongest and most vital tool in life. We use it to express our opinions, to make statements, to agree or disagree, to reveal our innermost emotions, to say yes, but to say that important no. We use it to share ideas worth spreading. But what if you had no voice? What if you had no speech? Malala Yousafzai, a human rights activist, the youngest person to win the Nobel Peace Prize, and who was a victim of attempted murder by the Taliban, once said, "We realize the importance of our voices only when we are silenced." 15% of the world's population has a disability. That is 1 billion people. Africa, as a continent, has 1 billion people living in the continent. That is how many people have a disability. Furthermore, 190 million people in the world have a severe disability, the vast majority of that being a communication disability that affects their daily functioning. The population size of Pakistan has 190 million people there. That is the same amount. Within South Africa, 200,000 people cannot talk. Let me put this in context. The largest stadium in South Africa is the F&B Stadium. And in 2011, 95,000 very excited fans filled that stadium for the rocking U2 band. I was a part of that 95,000 audience. There were a lot of people. If you had to fill the stadium twice, that is how many people in South Africa have no voice. Individuals with disabilities are also 4 times more likely to be victims of crime compared to their non-disabled peers. And this is an even more alarming concern in our developing countries. What if you couldn't tell a loved one that something horrible had happened to you, like you had been raped? What if you couldn't go to the police and give a statement and tell them what happened? What if you couldn't tell the social worker what happened in order to help you with the court preparation process? What if you couldn't tell the judge what happened? What if you couldn't testify? What if you just had no words? So how do we assist these individuals with no voices? How do we help in ending the silence with them? We use AAC, Alternative and Augmentative Communication. What is AAC, you may ask? The most famous person who uses AAC is Dr. Stephen Hawking, the world-renowned physicist. He uses a sensor that is activated by a small muscle in his cheek that speaks to his computer and then speaks for him. Another well-known person is the South African-born Martin Pistorius. He also uses his computer with software as voice output. Martin has overcome many challenges and has gone on to do inspirational things. He gave a TED Talk last year, and you guys should really go watch it. But let me show you a video quickly of my colleague Constance. She's using AAC. She's using her Android phone with software as her voice.
Being a victim of rape and not having a voice has so much impact and can be damaging because we may be pregnant or exposed to a diseases and can be discovered on a later stage or never.
So AAC can be in the form of a tablet with software. It can be a dedicated device designed specifically for communication purposes. It can be sign language like Hanel spoke about, or it can be a picture-based alphabet board. But what if the person who has no voice is now not literate? Dr. Stephen Hawking and Martin Pistorius, they can read and write. They can use text-to-speech. So how do we assist these individuals? A later study estimated that 90% of our children with disabilities are not literate and do not attend schooling. How do we help them? We use pictures, or like what we say in our field, graphic symbols. Currently, there is no complete language that is in the form of pictures or graphic symbols. And if you think that the average person has a vocabulary size of 25,000 to 35,000 words, you can see how this would be a mammoth task to try and identify pictures for all of this. So what we do is we identify context-specific vocabulary. There are many researchers identifying vocabulary for context that are able to put it on a communication board or program it into a communication device. But many times, important context vocabulary is not identified, like being a victim of crime. This is an example of a picture communication board. But let me stop and ask you a question. If you could, in one picture, represent the word rape, what would it be? It's not as easy as you think. That is why people like me are investing our time and energy in identifying this important vocabulary and matching it to pictures, so that in times of need, when a person who is not literate, who has no voice, and has been a victim of crime, can stand up and still tell their story. I work at the Center for Alternative and Augmentative Communication at the University of Pretoria, and currently a significant research project is underway doing exactly this. Currently, what we have identified, and this is one of the examples, we are very proud of this work, we identified vocabulary that is needed to disclose the crime to a loved one. What we are also doing is identifying vocabulary that is needed to give the statement to the police, because we know that the statement forms a crucial part of evidence when we go to court. We are also looking at identifying vocabulary that is needed during the court preparation process with the social worker. And what my contribution was, is I identified the important vocabulary that is needed to testify in court. Here are some examples. Next year, I will be embarking on my PhD journey. What I'm aiming to do is take all of this vocabulary, make it readily available in the form of a toolkit, so that this can be used as a guideline or a best practice model, not only for the legal professionals, but for the families and familiar communication partners that are working for these individuals who have been victims of crime. AAC, in the form of pictures, has the amazing ability to bring these individuals' voices forth. Imagine a world where every person who couldn't talk had the right vocabulary in the right device to be able to communicate. The risks of them being a victim of crime or a repeat victim could decrease drastically. Let us stop for a moment and think about those 200,000 individuals and the vast majority of the 190 million people living in the world who cannot talk, specifically those who are not literate. If we could give them this vital vocabulary, they would be empowered to be heard and not hurt. Thank you very much. Thank you.